This conference will now be recorded.
All right, guys, so welcome to this edition of Traders Exchange. As always, everything that we're going to be talking about today is for educational purposes only, and nothing is intended as any type of investment advice. All right, so very interesting morning. It was actually a really great morning. We had a whole bunch of stuff that was going on. I mean, some things that just followed exactly what they should have done from our pre-market. But this is not the time for that. We have a lot of questions actually. We have a bunch of questions from last week that we need to get done, and then we have a bunch of brand new ones. So we're just going to get right into things. All right. So first question. Guess what folder it's from? If we had to take a guess. And I know I joke around about this, but I love having a folder for somebody because it means as they're trading, they're thinking. And as they're thinking, they're writing it down. As they're writing it down, they're sending it in, and then we go over it. But yes, from Oscar. So this is from last week. So how can we determine when smart money is actually buying shares to push the stock up in order to sell their shares? Which is a phenomenal question. It's actually a very simple answer. But I do want to talk about one thing real quick before we do, kind of go into that. What's easier to trade, a stock that trades 25 million shares or a stock that trades 10 million? Because obviously there's a point where volume is too low, and there's also a point where volume could be too high, which 10 million is a lot easier. Why? Why? Just think about it. I want to bring a different screen up for a second, just so you guys can see something. And I would just want you to have an idea. All right. So what is this? Okay, what scanner is this right here? Less noise, less interference, 100%. Let's just break it down easy. Less trading. Okay, some money flow. I mean, we can go into a ton of different variables of why it's easier, but the simplest thing is there's just less trading. All right. So what is this right here? Most active trades. What does that scanner mean? Anybody know? Anyone use it? We talk about it every once in a while, and I keep it up for a certain reason, and I'm going to explain that to you right this second before we get into really answering that question. But does everyone know what the most active trades are? What that actually means? So it's not volume. See, that's the difference. It's not actual volume, because if we look, Mark right now has 151. Actually, this might be a bad example because 151 million shares is going to be hard to beat. But then NVIS should be pretty much right behind it, right? But you don't see that there. What is the yes? Thank you, Keith. Total number of trades. So it's not the highest amount of volume, it's the highest amount of actual trades. So let's say there was only retail here, okay, and they only traded 100 shares at a time. Okay, it might not be the highest volume, but it's the most trades that are actually happening within a stock. What does this scanner tell me? When I look at this scan, I mean, it's quite obvious. And one thing that you have to notice is that a lot of them are going to correlate with the active gainers and the active losers. But so not necessarily how much retail, but think prints wise. When I look at this scanner, what's the hardest stock? Or not the hardest stock, but the most work I have to do. What stock is that going to be? Most work that I have to do while paying attention. What's the ticker? MARK. It's right here, top of it, because it has the highest amount of trades that are going on. What's next? NVAX. And if you look, only 45 million shares, but if you look, NVIS is right here. So what does that tell me about NVAX? What does that tell me? Think about it. Break it down. What is this list? Why do I have this list even up? Because all these stocks are going to be somewhere over here. The SPY is always going to be up there. You're going to have your Apple. You're going to have your Teslas. But what does this tell me? When I see a stock that's on this list compared to over here on a stock that I'm actually going to pay attention, what is it telling me about how I'm going to have to read the print? Hopefully this kind of enlightens to know how difficult it is. Well, see, that's the thing. It doesn't make it more difficult. It just means there's going to be a ton more people trading it, and there's going to be a lot more work involved. The story is not going to be as short as something that's all the way down here at the bottom. Let's look at PYPL. Look at the print, and I don't even have to look at. I haven't looked at it all day, and I don't even have to. But what's the print personality in PYPL? It's on the bottom of the list here. So yeah, it's got a ton of trades going on, but what do I know? Yeah, it's not that big of a deal. So this is going to be a lot easier to read than MARK is going to be. So I wanted to bring that up because when I was reading this question before, and I saw it last week, and you guys know that I typically don't read anything until we do it live, because as a trader, we need to instantly be able to make decisions. All right. So my best answer is always going to be the second I read it, and that's what comes to my head. That's the same way that we need to kind of train our brains to do while we're actually trading. But I want you to understand this, is that MARK is going to be hard. Is going to be a lot more market makers. If it's on, let's just say, the top 10 of this list, is there going to be one market maker in it? Is there going to be one person controlling it? So I don't know, but the answer is probably not. Okay, statistically speaking, there's almost a guarantee that the top 10 of this list is not going to. That's the only reason I have it here, because this all falls into all the other scanners. But I just want to know, how much is it being traded? Because the more that someone trades, if there's only one market maker, guys, we've seen these stocks over and over again. mRNA has been one before. I mean, BYND is a great example. I mean, its print personalities definitely went a lot higher. And the reason I bring that up is just because those 144 ask prints that just popped up. But overall, we understand that there's going to be a lot more people that come into it. All right, so we know that it's going to be harder. So the whole reason I wanted to bring this up is because of the fact that cheaper stocks are always going to have more trades. And when I say a cheaper stock, it doesn't mean just a stock that's under 10 bucks, but a cheaper stock with a ton of volume is going to have a ton of people coming into it. So cheap stocks are a different animal. Okay, it's crazy to think about, but sometimes the $100 stock is so much easier to trade because there's so much less of a story that we actually have to read into. So let's get back to our question. How can we determine when smart money is actually buying shares to push the stock up in order for them to sell their shares? Let's just break down what you would do. All right, so let's say you have 1 million shares, right? Okay, or let's say 100,000, just to make the numbers easier. So you have 100,000 shares. All right. What's the only reason that you would buy to push it up based off of your position of trying to get out of those 100,000 shares? And I know that question wasn't really worded great, but when someone's trying to get out of a position to jump it up, remember, retail follows a chart. Just let's look at VTIQ real quick. Just when you see this movement towards the upside, that's what gets retail involved. And in order to sell a ton of shares, you have to make sure that retail is out there and willing to buy them from you. Okay, so before that actually happens, you have to see out of that 100,000 shares, they're going to sell off, give or take, and this is just kind of a roundish number, but about 70,000 of them before it even comes up to this point. So then now they're out 70,000. Let's just say they got in, at 21, because obviously we know that market makers are going to be buying at the lows. Okay, they create the lows and the high. So as it's coming back up, now they're at about 70,000 shares here. Okay, so they've locked in a ton of profit, but we would see those 70,000 shares coming out right near the highs. Okay, now the highs could be, you have to understand, if you have a ton of shares, the highs could start at 25 and then go into 25.50, then go into 26, then go into 26.50. But what we're going to continuously see as it's coming up to these levels, we're going to see that selling coming out. So if we get out of 70,000 shares, we have 30,000 left, right? So now if we put 20,000 in to push it up, okay, how easy is it to get out of 20,000 versus 100,000? What's the difficulty of trade there? Easy, hard? It's way easier. Way easier. So we have to understand the person that we're following is always going to be the person that we're looking for. All right. It doesn't matter, don't get me wrong. As we're coming up, so let's actually just bring up a cheap stock so we can use the exact example. Let's bring up all right, we'll bring up this. So as we come into here, we can see, so a cheaper stock, as we're coming back up, yeah, we get to 10. If we had 100,000 shares down here at, at basically at 9, and we push up at 10, and we get out of pretty much our entire position, then we push it up with 20,000 shares. And once again, I'm just using numbers. The number is going to be a lot higher in a cheaper stock. And remember, these are different animals. A cheaper stock based off of, what we just talked about with the most trading that's going on is going to be the hardest type of stock to trade just because there's more people coming into it. But then they come in, they get rid of their 70,000 shares, and then right over 10, they push it up with 20,000 shares. So now they have 50,000 shares, which they can drop on people. But as this bar is coming up, you're going to see the person you originally followed for those 100,000 shares start to get out. Now, I don't look at the numbers. Okay, because if you try to do the math calculations, unless you're Rain Man, it's going to be almost impossible. What I look for is the print side of things. Okay, if I follow somebody that comes in with 10 prints, I know I need to start seeing where those 10 prints, where that actual position starts to make sense to sell. So the easiest answer to this question is, as the stock is coming up, you're going to be seeing the person that's getting out. All right. And then when they make that final push, it's nothing compared to what they had. And then when we hit that top, you're going to see almost all of it leak out. Now, when almost all of it leaks out, what does it look like? When it starts to leak out, do they just show anything? See, it doesn't. A lot of the times when the prints start leaking out, you're going to see them in smaller prints, because do they want to show people that they're just completely getting out? Do they want people to know exactly what they're doing? No, absolutely not, because if everybody knows what they're doing, it's going to be so much harder for them to be able to do it. So you're going to start to see it in smaller prints. But that also tells you that the lack of buying as it's pushing up compared to the selling that we saw when they're getting out, that's how we know that those prints don't need to be satisfied. Because right here, okay, if we get a bunch of prints, let's say above this orb line at 1030, all right, 1030 to 1060 is plenty of money for them to make on 20,000 shares. 20,000 shares, I know we, kind of think of it as a lot, but it doesn't really mean much. It's in the scheme of things, it's nothing. You have a stock, it's trading 11 million shares. 20,000 shares is, it's not as much as you would think. So when we see those positions coming in, we have to understand what happened coming up to that point. Because if every level we come up, let's call this 20 cents, all right? And we'll just for numbers reasons. But we see 960 selling, we see 980, they start selling, stock keeps going up. We see 10, they're going to do a lot more selling because it's easier there. But then all of a sudden we see that buying come up above 10. Why did all those people sell up to 10? And then only a little bit get bought afterwards? Does everyone understand? You guys see exactly You see what I mean? So as we're coming back up, if they're selling as the stock's pushing up, then we see a little bit of buying. That doesn't mean that person really meant to buy. I mean, obviously they did. It's real buying, but that's when you get these type of pushes that come back up, because all of a sudden that buying comes out of nowhere. We think the stock's going up, and boom, hammer drops. That's exactly what it looks like every single time, especially on a cheaper stock, for somebody to push a stock up to then sell off on you. All right, but it does not just start out of nowhere. So when we look at a stock, and it goes from 9 to, in this case, 1060, the selling doesn't just start at 10. We need to understand that the levels coming up to it, because if this stock was going to 15, guys, what would we see at every 20-cent level? What would we see? So buying, but more specifically, a new position. We'd see more positions actually coming in. So if the person we're following is selling at these levels as we come up, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere we get buying, you got to think about something. Okay, does a market maker know exactly what's going to happen within a stock? Do they know exactly what is going to happen? They do. So is there any chance in the world that a stock that's going to run to 15 in this case, they're not going to be buying at every level? Are we not going to see, and I'm not just talking about buying as in, a few ask prints like this. I'm talking about buying big positions that stand out. Of course they're going to, because they're going to be adding and adding and adding and adding, because as the stock is going straight up like this, when we have a parabolic move, basically what that's telling us, it's harder to get shares. So if it's going to push to 15, we have to see at every single level them buying, because they don't have a chance to really bring it back down to build. So that's exactly how you're able to read something like that. It's going to, there you go, Dave. It's going to be so clear that they're loading as it's going up, because there's stocks, guys, that we've seen. We joke about it all the time, and we're way overdue for this. But a stock going to 98, a $2 stock going to 98. But as that's happening, they don't have a chance to really kind of pull back to get that consolidation to really start building. So as something's moving, that directly, and that, basically parabolic, we understand that there has to be something coming into it. We're going to see, but the prints, when the stock is moving straight up, guys, are they going to be big or are they going to be small? It's the one time that you have to focus on what looks like retail buying and selling. Because when a stock goes straight up, there's not a lot of people that are willing to just sell off there. So unless the orders are thick, and on a cheap stock, it really doesn't work that way 99% of the time. You're going to see most of where the market makers are actually buying and selling is going to come in these smaller parts. That's why when we get something like, let's just say it was, parabolic right now, and we see something like this, it means a huge deal, because the difficulty of trade is going to be there. So the simple answer is really, how do we know when they're going to push a stock up to then drop it on people? Is because they're selling off, and then out of nowhere they give that one last buy. And that's why we see so many of these cheaper stocks. They'll get buying at 10 on the ask, it pushes it up, and then boom, comes down, never comes back again, because of that exact example. Make sense, guys? Any questions? All right, beautiful. So I completely forgot. I wanted to go over this first, just for everybody. So format window, anyone that's on TradeStation, the reason that a lot of you guys are having different prints is because of this. And once again, this is a theory that I have just based on, I was talking to somebody yesterday. But this is really what you want to look at. Okay, so bid and ask. Okay, these things aren't really going to change anything. Okay, they're it is what it is. They, every once in a while, like in the aftermarket, you're going to get something up, but trade is the most important thing. So if you don't have, first of all, I hope your colors are correct. If they're not, above ask is yellow, at ask is green, at bid is red, below bid is purple, and between the bid and ask is black and white. All right, but the subtypes, if you have subtypes enabled, corrections, you can enable corrections. All that does is it pretty much strikes out a trade that shouldn't have happened. But once again, that mostly will only happen at 4. But trends is a big one. Okay, if you have trends enabled, does everyone remember what happened with what happens with Thinkorswim? And not to say Thinkorswim is not a phenomenal platform, because it is. It's just not a great trading platform. Well, not a great day trading platform. Okay, it was literally built to make options. But trends. So essentially, if the stock is going up, it's going to give you, some type of, either ask or above the ask. If it's going down, it's going to give you some type of bid or below the bid there. But you need to make sure this stuff is shut off. Corrections, like I said, that's fine. But subtypes, make sure that they're completely gone, and make sure that your colors are correct. Okay, when the bid and ask is pretty much set the way that it needs to be. There's really nothing that you need to do there. But overall, just make sure that happens. Where do you open? Okay, so right click your time and sales. So whatever time and sales that you have. Can I go to prints on INO? I absolutely can. Are you talking about the bid below bid prints that came in at 13? Or excuse me, above ask prints right here? Yeah, they definitely were not red. Just based off of what I was seeing coming into it. I mean, maybe they were. I'm doing Traders Exchange, but these are definitely not bid prints whatsoever. And plus, also, just understanding the story. But you see how my settings, the way that my settings are, guys, I never have a problem. It 99% of the time matches exactly what I see. Now, don't get me wrong. Every once in a while, there's going to be wrong prints. It's every platform I've ever used. I've used Lightspeed. I've used ViewTrade. I've used Interactive Brokers, which time and sales I hate on that. But I've used a ton of different platforms. There's always going to be some things that are a little bit off. But these are the settings that you need to have within them. So, the reason that I say this is because my other computer to the right of me right now is where I actually execute my trades from, and I don't keep time and sales up. I don't keep anything but my actual execution. Basically just like we went over in previous Traders Exchange, just with our level 2s, and I have a bunch of level 2s that have one for buying and one for selling. That's all set up for that. But overall, I looked at the settings, and the settings were different on that computer from this. And it was just from a conversation that I had with somebody last night that was asking me about order execution. So overall, this is what it needs to be in order to get the right data. Oscar for new. Okay, so subtypes, if you go to format window, color, subtypes, off. Do not enable those, because then it gives you like all this crazy stuff. All I care about is it an ask or a bid? That's all I care about. I do not care about all basket trading and stuff like that. Now, don't get me wrong. If we get some crazy prints that come in, yeah, I'm going to look at it, and I'm going to bring the time and sales over. And I'm going to just look at the conditions sometimes. But if you have the subtypes clicked and you have those other things coming in, these conditions will change what the color says, even though that it's not technically that, because the conditions compare. However it works, I don't care. Once again, I'm a very simple person. Just want to know, is on the ask, on the bid, above the ask, or below the bid. So that's we talked about this morning, and I know last night after I had the conversation with somebody, I wanted to, I was just looking through things, and I think that might be a big reason why a lot of people have had problems, especially when having two computers, and it shows up different on the same thing, because that means you're on the same server. So it was really bothering me. So just something to definitely take a look at. And INO. Of course, during Traders Exchange. All right, any questions on time and sales? We all good? If you do have any questions, you could DM me, and afterwards, and I'll make sure that I answer you. Luckily, we're also day traders. We can all compare, and that that's one thing. Trading as a team. it makes things a lot easier. But I was just very confused to why my prints were almost always right. And then sometimes, don't get me wrong, sometimes you're going to get the wrong color that comes in when you're watching, but that's a platform. That happens anywhere. I don't care what platform that you're using, but it's rare that it actually goes on that way. I'm not sure if this works, but thanks for thinking and checking. Okay, well, I mean, I'm just going to keep going by it. And, that was the one thing to look and make sure that your trends are off and all of that. But we'll see. It might be the, once again, it's a theory. Just was thinking about you guys and trying to make sure that everyone can see exactly what I see. So try it, see what happens. All right. So next question. Hey, Rich, this is a long. So this is a question in psychology. In your beginning stages, or even now, when you have a successful trade and once it's closed and realized profit, what do you do to control that rush of excitement and adrenaline to remain focused on the next trade? Stay disciplined. Thank you. So this psychology question. So I'm going to tell you something, guys. We're going to, in classes, so our level 1 classes this round that we're going to be going through, we're going to bring things down to how our mind works like cavemen, because that's how we're all programmed. We're all programmed to live. All right. And I'm not going to get too far into it right now because obviously, that's going to be an entire class. But so a successful trade, I want you to think about some, and I'm going to give away some of the class so I want you to think about something. Let's say you were living in, let's say the 1500s, all right? So you're a fisherman, all right? So you had to go find twine, which, you could basically get from, from the backside of tree bark or whatever, but you made a line, a fishing line. All right, and then you had to take some type of either rock or something. There were no hooks, so we had to put the hook onto that. What happened, okay, when you caught a fish and you were reeling it in? What was the psychology behind it? What's that feeling? Put yourself in that exact position. What's the feeling? I'm going to eat today. So excitement meant living, being able to continue to live, right? So now I want you to think about something else. I want you to think about how many times a bigger fish, as you were reeling it in, came in and took that fish. Where does our mind go now? We've probably all seen YouTube videos where that's happened. It's actually never happened to me. I have had the tail of a fish chopped off as I was, I don't know if it actually, was bit off. Yeah, so I hate that fish. Okay, at that point, what's your only thought? So that excitement meant you were going to eat tonight. Now you're not going to eat. What's your only thought now? It's only one thought to have. Yeah. Well, Steve, if I'm going to live, I need to go back at it. There's nothing. There's just living. Okay. And the market, as crazy as it is, it brings our mindset to understand that we've gone away from all of our natural instincts. So our instincts now are really just almost artificial compared to that animal instinct that we actually had. Because if you lost, you had the fish coming in, of course you're going to eat tonight. So you might be happy, but while you're reeling in that fish, is anyone ever happy until the fish is in the boat? And if you're not a fisherman, I know this might kind of miss you, but are you ever happy until it's literally in the boat? Not really. It's exciting to be able, to reel it in. Yeah, but exactly, not 100%. So if that fish then ends up getting taken, what do? You cast again. So you have to think we were not doing this to have to eat. All right. Yeah, well, I mean, some of us might, but essentially our mindset needs to go to that same point. We need to get back, because this is how market makers think. And anyone know somebody that's a savage? And when it comes to business, to money, they're just a savage. Nothing ever, doesn't matter. They can get a ton of money and they just go back at it. They get a ton of money, they go back at it. They just have this mindset that comes in. And I'm not going to lie, when I was talking, I had the same person in mind. But there's no such thing as being done. And that's really what it comes down to, is that they're never really done. And that's where our mind has to go back to. It has to go back to where, the actual, the caveman instincts come back at us. All right, so we have to literally train our minds to follow the instincts that are within us. So what I used to do when I'd have a winning trade, I'm not going to lie, there's times my hands would shake. Okay, I remember my, on P, first trade, the first big trade I ever made, 4,000 shares, got out at 18 cents. My hands were shaking. I needed to walk out. But we have to understand that's part of being a human. Well, being a human now, more so, because it didn't used to happen that way. When you caught a fish, well, guess what? That was going to feed the whole village. So you had to just keep doing it. So we have to try to train our mind to get back to that point. So a walk is good. I know I used to take a lot of walks when, in my beginning stages. I'd get up from the computer after a winning trade. And one of the funny parts is that, we've talked about this within our journaling classes before, but most people, when they go out there, after they have a winning trade, they don't analyze it. So they only look at their losers. They don't look at their winners, which makes it, we know why we did it, but sometimes you have a winner and it really shouldn't have been a winner, but you ended up making money on it. So it really comes back to going to where the instincts are, and going back to just, being a best word for it is a savage. And understanding that there's your catch isn't in your boat until 4 p.m. And then from there, what you can do is you manage it. The catch is in your boat until the end of the week. And then from there, the catch is in your boat till the end of the month. So looking at things as a time frame really helps. Anyone here ever, been at work on a Friday before and just watched the clock and waited for it to end? Ever happened before? Of course. So what happens is that once we get that trade, it's almost like 10 minutes to 5 on a Friday. But our mind cannot work that way. Okay, so you really, what the goal is to actually train your mind to start basically being upset once the market's over. So one trade doesn't mean anything, all right? Because what happens is, if one trade means something to you, let's say we make $200, and don't get me wrong, at the same time, some people have different goals. So if $200 is your goal and that's what you want to make for the week, and you hit it, then be done. But that's the difference between a good trader and a great trader. So what it comes down to is actually having to try to train our minds to understand that it's never over. All right, and it comes back down to the game. All right, this is exactly what it is. So the methods that I used, it's hard because everyone's mind is going to be a bit different depending on how we think. All right, but it's a game. When does a game end? When does a game end? Any game. When does it end? Power turns off. Yeah, when the clock hits 0. Okay, so if you reverse that and you look at it, our clock hits 0 at 4 p.m. When the time's done, there's no more game to actually play. So our minds have to work in a certain way, and this, once again, it doesn't take this to be a good trader, but this is where great traders go into. There's no end. And even when the clock runs out, what happens with a great trader? What happens with a great trader once the clock runs out? There's a lot of trading after market hours. There's a lot of movement after market hours. There's not a lot of trading. Well, they're sad, but guess what? Their mind still keeps going for the next day, just like, all the answers. So that goes into study, goes into review, goes into setting up for tomorrow. And the only way to actually do that, because there's no right answer. Everybody wants the perfect answer for psychology. And how should I go about this? How did you do it? And this is how it worked. It doesn't work that way. Okay, I don't know if you guys ever read, I put something in the food for thought once, and I was talking to a good friend, and we were talking about psychology for some reason. He said 98% of us are different. I forget what the exact quote was, but it was like 98% of us are different, and 90% of us are different, and 90% of us are the same. The math doesn't add up, and that's exactly what it is. The only way to actually make yourself mentally do something is to build a what? Natural selection occurs rather quick. A habit. That's it. So once the first time that I traded 4,000 shares in P, okay, Brett told me to do it. I did it. I got out 18 cents when I knew it was going to 50. Terrible trade. Absolutely horrendous trade. Okay, but guess what the next step was? What was my next step? Because my hands were shaking. I had to take a walk afterwards. I could still feel it. Like when I think back of that memory, I can still feel it. No, I didn't up my shares. Did not up my shares the next time. What did I do? I just did it again. Same thing. Did it again. Because the next time, my hands didn't shake as much. The next time, I didn't get that hot sweat type feeling where I need to get out of my chair and pull my shirt off me, and because that's what it feels like. So all I did was do it again to build that comfort zone to a larger point, because I wasn't comfortable the second time either, not the third time. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, the first trade that I ever won, I think it was like 50 shares. I don't even remember the ticker, but I've had the same feeling as the first time that I traded P for 4,000 shares. So I had that same feeling, but what I did was just keep doing it. All of us want a secret key to not having feelings, right? Anyone here not want that? Everybody here wants an answer to, this is exactly how I did it, and it's going to work for you. But everything that we know about psychology, is that possible? I just want to be a robot. No, it's not. It's impossible. The only way to get out of having nervous feelings, having, excitement, the market opening, you hear that bell at 9:30, and then not, trying to do a million things at once, is to build a habit. So when you find something that happens within yourself, all right, and you don't like it, or it's not even that you don't like it, it's just it does not work for trading, what should you do? What's the only thing we can do? I wish there was a special pill you could take or a book to read. There isn't. All we can do is do it again. Because once we do it again, our hands will be a lot less shaky. Okay? If we continuously make successful trades, guess what? Comfort zone builds, gets easier. And all of a sudden, a successful trade isn't a successful trade anymore. What it is, it's a building stone to the rest of your week. And then when you have a successful week, okay, and you're still kind of, giddy and stuff, and that's okay. You could be giddy as you want, 4 p.m. on Fridays, and then Saturday and Sunday. So you could be as giddy as you want, but guess what? The next week, you do the same thing, gonna be less giddy. Gonna be less giddy until a point where you're not money motivated anymore. When you're not money motivated, guess what? It becomes a game. because obviously we're all here to make money. But the thing is that we have to find habits to build to make this a game. If it's anything other than a game, you're going to get played. It's that simple, because market makers don't care. A lot of these people out here with all this money, it's not their money. They're trading other people's money. It's very, well, to me, technically, I think it's way harder to do that, but it's not their money. It's a game. It's based off of percentages and methods. Okay? It's the same way, anyone ever take a 90% trade and lose it? Has anyone ever had that happen to them? I'm talking about a straight 90% trade. Perfect. And then lost. Yeah. It's happened to me. It's happened to me 9 times one time out of 10. You know what I'm saying? So the first time, what's going to happen? The first time that happens to you, what's your reaction? What's your feeling? Well, that's what I'm saying. Obviously, you need to make sure that it actually is a 90% trade. But out of 10 times, I'm going to lose 1. It's going to happen. The first time that happened to me, I was literally breaking monitors, breaking keyboards. I've told you guys all these stories. You go back to the recordings and you'll see, but it's like, what were they doing? Why would they do that? But guess what? Now it doesn't mean anything. Okay, when I lose a 90% trade and I get shaken out of a 90% trade, you know what it comes down to now? What's my next trade percentage going to be? What do you think my next trade percentage is? Yeah, I was going to go with 150, but yeah, let's say let's say 90. Oh, go ahead. Excuse me. Let's say 95. Because yes, it's a higher percentage now. Because if I was wrong the first time and then it gave me the second time, statistically, it's way higher. And yes, 95 statistically, which that's what we're all about. But do you understand? The first time I did it, and that's what everyone wants. Everyone wants to be a robot right this second. And that's impossible. Well, it's not, but you might have, abused like small animals as a child if you're able to just, there's only certain, certain mentalities that you could just immediately be able to do something like that. And we all joke around, Dave robot, myself robot, Doug robot, Donna robot. And guess what? It's not true. Everyone has feelings, but we're all looking to just completely just suppress them immediately, and that's not possible. So this question, I know I went kind of long-winded into it, but what it comes down to is building a habit. If you build a habit, the first time that you don't think of it like a game, second time it's going to be more of a game, third time it's going to be more of a game. The key is just focus. One thing students need to understand is a robot is not controlling your emotions as much as you understanding a feeling comfortable with what you were saying. That's the same thing. You can get as upset as you want as long as it doesn't affect your trading. I agree with that 100%. Don't get me wrong. I still get mad at things, but it has nothing to do with what my percentages are. If a trade's 90%, no matter what my feelings are, I'm going to go heavy-handed into it. It's that simple. Okay, but it doesn't mean that, if the guy takes a little bit longer than they should, or they don't do something at the certain point, that I'm not, like, what the hell is this person doing? It's part of being a human. Unfortunately, we're humans. Well, Dave might be a robot, but most of us are humans. So we have to understand that the only way to get out emotion is to continuously do it and focus on it. If every time your TV turns on, and I'm just going to literally just looked at the TV and I'm just going to, off the top of my head, every time your TV turns on, you get mad. Now, I don't know why you would, but if every time your TV turns on, you get mad, how do you stop it? Very simple. How do you stop it? It's 2 ways. Number 1, don't turn your TV on anymore. Well, yeah, I guess you could destroy it. You're probably better off selling it before just, ruining things within your house. But yeah, don't turn your TV on. But that's crazy because TVs get turned on everywhere. That means you could never go out again. Any bar that you go to, any place that you go. So that's not a real way to actually stop that emotion. The only thing you can do is focus each time it gets turned on getting less mad. You see what I mean here? So that's the focus. You have to, every time that TV gets turned on, you have to get less mad, but you have to focus on it and build that habit. Because eventually, if you continuously get less and less and less and less mad, what's going to end up happening? One day a TV is going to turn on, and what happens? No feeling. The issue is not the TV, but you. But guess what, Amy? We can't not be us. So see, that's the thing about psychology. We cannot not be us. We're a human. Now, yes, that's a ridiculous example, but I want you to understand of how you can progress past these issues. So if every time I have a winning trade, I get really excited, my hands start shaking, I need to take a walk, the only way to break that is the next time to focus on not doing it. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not gonna happen. There's still gonna be feelings, but if I take a little bit away from that each time, okay, after my experience and after the time, a certain time period, depending on who the person is, it's gonna get easier. A habit will break any feelings. And I know that's really weird to say. All right, I'm actually going to give you a perfect example. I'm giving you way too much of what we're going to be talking about in classes, but I want you to. So I'm not a morning person. I hate the morning. I literally I don't like to be woken up. I don't like when my alarm goes off. I don't like being up early. I'm just not that person. I'm a night person. All right, but waking up at the same time every single day, going into the chat every single the same time. Okay, if it's 8:15 and I don't say good morning all, I'm probably I'm either off or I'm not here anymore. I mean, it's that simple. But guess what? Do you think I think about waking up in the morning anymore? No, I'm not mad about it anymore because it just happens. Same thing happens on Saturday. I can't stop it. Same thing happens on Sunday. The days that I don't even have to, it still happens. But that was a feeling that I wasn't a big fan of. And building a habit actually stopped it. Because if you're focused on a habit, can you be focused on something that upsets you or that excites you or anything else? Or is it just a habit? This is a really great question, by the way. That's it. A habit will stop anything. Okay, it doesn't mean that you're not going to have feelings as a person, but a habit can control everything. So the habit is the most important part. Make sense? I know, like I said, I went a little bit long-winded. When we get into psychology, that's as you guys can tell, that's my favorite thing. Well, besides tape reading, but all right. So next question. In our morning meeting today, you said W in $2.50 and $5 levels, and that two prints could move at 250 cents, $2.50. I understand that it takes less prints to move a stock like this, but how do you go about measuring it can move X amount with only prints? In other words, it's going to take Y prints to move it X amount. I've tried tracking the positions I'm seeing coming in and trying to how to ID how many prints it would take to move a stock from level to level, but I get mixed up. All right, later, Derek. All right, so the easiest way to go about it, so first you need to break it down this way, okay? Is there a difference between 3 prints or 4 prints? Is there really any difference? Yep, not really. Okay, is there really a difference between 5 and 6 prints? No. So what we have to do is we have to find kind of the print personality and understand how many prints it takes to move something. Now, The pre-market, the easiest way in the world to go about that is look what happened. Sometimes we forget the simplest answers, but all you got to do is just look what happened. So if you got one print and it moved the stock $1, two prints probably going to move it $1 in that same type of deal. Now, also, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of screen time that goes behind this and understanding just a type of stock based off of the puzzle that you see out there. Remember, there's not that many puzzles. I mean, you're talking about maybe 5 to 10 puzzles that you see within a stock, and they all fall within those categories. So just understanding what kind of stock, and if we go back to W right now, you can see, I mean, the range is big. All right. So right here, 192, 1,500 shares, that's a big position. That tells me right now, and I'm just guessing, just based off of exactly what I see right now, but after a pretty substantial pull-up, let's say call it 50 to 75 cents, a trigger down to that downside is coming to this orb. That's off one print, but look, it's based off this personality. And it's based off of what's actually already happened. Now, I can see that this whole move down towards that downside from 195 hasn't shown anything. So that one print is a huge deal in comparison. Everything's relative. So relative to everything that we see, it jumps out at you. So even though there's only one print here, it's basically showing us that we're getting to a minimum of that orb line. That's $1 move towards that downside. So it's looking at what's happened. Okay, an IPO, can we know the print personality until it shows us? Yeah, it's impossible, right? Because there's literally nothing there. So we haven't seen it yet. So that's why when an IPO opens, I don't just buy. And then if you just buy, it's going to better be based off of, the understanding what the actual company is, but it hasn't shown us anything. So you need some type of information to come in. But at the same time, before I even look at the prints, if I look like a stock like W, okay, let's just look at the main factors. Okay, first thing I always like to look at is average. Well, I mean, volume is number one. Okay, volume's okay. It's not really there, but it's okay. But then I look at the average, $8.08. How does a stock move $8.08? Is it by printing tons of shares? Nope. Because if it did, it wouldn't be moving that way unless just some type of difficulty of trade that comes back into it. But from right there, just looking at this average alone, we can understand how many prints is it really going to take. A stock that moves $8, is it going to print a lot? Okay, we just talked about this on the cheaper stocks, but when a stock goes straight up or straight down, guys, is it easy to get a lot of shares of it? And then we look at our orders and we can see they're pretty much non-existent. So from those non-existent orders, it's telling us that there's not going to be a lot. So our print personality comes from, first of all, that puzzle that we see, and then second, from just looking what's happened. That's why the pre-market's so important. The pre-market sometimes, guys, if you see prints come in at 7:30, at 8, even this is up until 8:30, a lot of the times they're not going to come to fruition very quickly. And we have to understand that. We know that's one of our rules, is that the earlier that it happens, okay, the less likely it is to happen immediately. So we get that, but at the same time, all we have to do is just look at the puzzle. Okay, when the personality shows us that the stock is going to move a huge amount, we know there's not going to be a lot that comes into this. So that's where there's no exact number. There's not like, okay, well, this type of stock needs 3 prints. This type of stock needs 4 prints. But in a stock like W, looking at this, it's not going to take anything. It really is not going to take anything besides a pull-up and a trigger back towards that downside based off of this. Now, I want you to understand something, though. Do we want to follow one print? Unless it's got a ton of volume. Now, you could see 6.4, this is why we don't trade stocks like this. Okay, 6,000 shares, it's showing us it just capped up because there's no real trading that's going on within it. But it's still going to come down to this orb based off the selling that we see coming in there. But you see how that puzzle works? The puzzle is going to tell us what prints to look for. Okay, that's how we get, we were talking about it before earlier with INO, but this is how you get rid of the noise, is understand exactly what it's going to take. Because when we see a bunch of this crap, guess what? Doesn't mean anything. Has nothing to do with any decision that I'm ever going to make. But if we look over here, 192.99, you're talking about almost 1,000 shares. That's a big deal. And there's a bunch of people that came into it. So that's where our riders came in to jump this up, and then we're going to end up getting a trigger back down towards that downside. Okay, especially you take the variable in that it just jumped up on nothing, so cannot hold, no substance behind what it jumped up on, and that's where the rest of our variables end up coming into. But that's really what it comes down to, is understanding what the puzzle looks like compared to what it's going to take. So then if in W, if we get 5 prints, guys, in W, is it short term or long term? Definitely longer term, based off of what we see come in there. And this is, all, the print stuff is something that we're going to be going into really deep next week on Tuesday when we start our next round of classes. All right, guys, any questions? I know there's a bunch of questions that I did not hit. I have them flagged, and I will make sure that I get to them on Tuesday next week. But any questions on anything we went over? Good to go. All right, beautiful. So we'll talk to everyone in the chat, and happy trading.